Islam views the human being as a unified architecture. The methodology of tarbiyah, or Islamic cultivation, refuses to isolate the physical body from the intellect and the spirit. When the scholar Hasan al-Banna mapped the precise requirements for this cultivated Muslim, he established a framework of 10 distinct characteristics. The first characteristic on that list is Qawiy Al-Jism, a strong physique. Historically, raw physical power has a high failure rate. Unchecked strength routinely produces tyranny, oppression, and systemic collapse. The Islamic framework treats physical strength as a specialized operational vehicle, specifically engineered to carry a divine trust. To convert raw physical power into this refined Islamic capability, the Qur'an applies 6 strict regulatory constraints. Mapping out these exact constraints reveals why al-Banna positioned physical strength as the core prerequisite of his methodology. The first regulatory parameter emerges from the historical decline of Bani Israel. This generation suffered a deep crisis of values. Having lost their military and political standing, they began measuring leadership capability entirely by wealth and noble lineage. Allah corrected this flawed metric. When the time came to appoint a commander to face their oppressors, he chose Talut, a man lacking wealth and social status, but possessing specific required capabilities. This verse from Al-Baqarah isolates the exact criteria. Allah endowed him abundantly with both ilm, knowledge, and jism, physical capacity. The syntax of the revelation is deliberate. The word ilm is placed before the word jism. A powerful body operating without knowledge functions as an instrument of oppression. Islam strips the glory away from raw power unless it is directed by clear insight. Therefore, the initial structural constraint placed on physical capability is epistemological guidance. Once guided by knowledge, strength requires a moral parameter. Before his prophethood, Musa possessed extraordinary, lethal physical power. A single strike from him in Egypt was enough to unintentionally kill a grown man. Later, as a fugitive in Madian, he applied that same immense strength differently. Exhausted and pursued, he stepped forward to perform the heavy labor of watering a flock for 2 shepherdesses, before quietly retreating into the shade. One of the women advised her father to hire him, using a specific phrase recorded in Surah Al-Qasas, al-Qawiy Al-Amin, the strong and trustworthy. Conversely, noble intentions lacking the physical capability to execute them are practically useless. Trust forms the second structural constraint. The third parameter scales these concepts from the individual to the state, taking shape in the period following the Battle of Badr. This is Al-Anfal, verse 60, with Sayyid Qutb's commentary. The Qur'an commands believers to muster quwwah, preparing every form of strength and military capability. Qutb clarifies the objective isn't perpetual warfare. The verse explicitly states the goal, that you may overawe the enemies of Allah. In this strategic context, strength serves peace. It is an active deterrent designed to prevent aggression before it occurs, ensuring the freedom of the dawah. Physical capability operates as a strategic necessity to deter oppression. This is the third constraint. The fourth parameter dictates the metaphysical limits of material strength. The ancient people of Ad possessed peak physical might, immense material prosperity, and civilizational achievement. They were not defeated by an invading army. Their collapse was the direct consequence of severing their spiritual connection to the Creator, rejecting divine guidance. Prophet Hud addressed this decay precisely. In Surah Hud, verse 52, he promised that, if they repented, Allah would not just grant them strength, but add strength to their existing strength. As Sayyid Qutb notes, the Quranic narrative establishes a recurring law. The survival of a civilization depends less on material force than on the internal spiritual qualities that sustain it. Spiritual vitality acts as the fourth constraint, anchoring physical capability to its divine source. The fifth parameter addresses the biological reality of the human life cycle and the illusion of youth. Human beings routinely assume that physical vitality is an independent, permanent state of being. This chart visualizes the strict biological timeline mapped out in Surah Ar-Rum, verse 54. Allah creates man in a state of weakness, grants a temporary phase of physical strength, and inevitably returns him to the weakness of old age. Recognizing this finite timeline strips away arrogance. It forces a state of gratitude, and more importantly, intense urgency. The believer carries the behavioral expectation to fully deploy their physical capability to serve the mission before the inevitable decay of old age reclaims it. Understanding strength as a temporary lease forces immediate, purposeful action. This finalizes the fifth constraint. The final parameter elevates strength from the individual to the collective. During his travels, the righteous leader Dhul-Qarnayn encountered an isolated society. Facing the destructive force of Ya'juj and Ma'juj, the people felt entirely powerless and offered him wealth to unilaterally build a protective barrier for them. Dhul-Qarnayn refused their payment. Instead, he issued a specific command found in Surah Al-Kahf: "Assist me with strength." He did not tell them to stand aside. He took a frightened, passive community and forced them to become active, physical participants in the construction of their own defense. The Quran presents the highest utility of strength as the capacity to organize, inspire, and channel the raw energy of others toward a righteous objective. Collective mobilization locks in as the sixth and final constraint. This is the complete conceptual model of Qawiy Al-Jism. It is physical power guided by insight, restrained by trust, prepared for defense, sustained spiritually, executed with urgency, and mobilized collectively. When this model is aligned as the first of Hasan al-Banna's 10 characteristics, its function becomes clear. It serves as the first requirement because this engineered capability provides the baseline vehicle required to carry the Ummah's long-term mission. Islamic capability serves as a tool for the Creator, refined by these 6 constraints to ensure it remains a means of service rather than an object of pride.